You're listening to Ideal Practice, episode number 146. Today, guys, you get to meet my guest, Robyn Miller, who just taught me a lot about what it means to have a proper professional will as part of your overall practice management strategy. Guys, there's so much more to this than I realized, and I am so glad we had this conversation. And I think you're going to be glad you heard it. So, stay tuned. Hi, I'm Wendy Pitts-Reeves, and with over 2 decades of experience in the private practice world, I've built my 6-figure business while learning a lot of lessons the hard way. This is the first podcast that shows you how to apply the principles of energy, alignment, and strategy to build a practice that is profit-centered, but people-forward. This is the Ideal Practice Podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Ideal Practice Podcast. You're going to hear me say that exact same thing when the interview starts. Can't help it. Hey everyone, this is Wendy Pitts-Reeves, your host. And I am truly excited to be hanging out with you today. I've got something really important to share. You are going to meet Robyn Miller. Robyn is a Harvard-trained clinical psychologist who's been in practice for a long time in, I think, Bethesda is where she's at in Maryland, just north of DC. And she has had a series of life experiences that taught her how important it is that we have a comprehensive professional will. Now, I don't know about you, but I've heard forever that we need to have a professional will. I never thought anything about it. To me, that meant basically make sure you've got a colleague who will come get your charts if something happens to you and knows what to do with them. That's kind of how I've thought about it. With this conversation today, I've learned there is so much more to it than that. Today, for the first time, I'm hearing about the concept of a practice executor. Robyn's got a lot to teach us. She says that we have an ethical obligation to safeguard our clients, our practice, and guys, even our family, by creating this comprehensive professional will. She definitely got my attention. So I don't want to keep you waiting. Let's get in to the interview. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Ideal Practice Podcast. I'm so happy to be hanging out with you today. And I have a really special guest today who is going to be talking with us about something we have not yet talked about here on this podcast at all. And I feel kind of bad about that. I'm like, why haven't we talked about this? So I'm excited about covering this topic. You've already heard a little bit about her in the intro, but let me go ahead and just welcome her and say hello. Come on board, Robyn, and say hi to everybody.
Hello. Hi, Wendy, and all your listeners. Thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. So I love to start. One of the things I love about podcasting, there are lots of things, but one of them is getting to meet people in all kinds of crazy places. I've talked to people all over the country and sometimes in other countries, and it is always fun to me. Tell people where you are and a little bit about what you do. Who do you serve? How do you serve them? Let's start with that.
Okay. Well, I am in Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C., and I have had a psychology practice, a private practice for almost 25 years, and really deeply meaningful, long-term relational work with lots of different people I've been privileged to work with and to continue working with. But I also have a new business over the past year called TheraClosure, which is the first therapist professional executor service. And I'll tell you more about it as we go, but it's really given me this new opportunity to speak to a lot of new people and to educate about the importance of thinking about our practice and our patients and their well-being in the event that something happens to us. And it's hard.
Mm.
It's something that people, may not want to talk about, but I encourage listeners to really hang in there and pay attention. This
Yeah.
is not, an effort to be depressing or paranoid. It's really about trying to be prepared and think about how to have the best practice in good conscience with
Mm.
all of the due diligence that you possibly can as a
Yeah.
devoted therapist.
Yeah. Um, I love that you're saying right off the bat, stick with us. Don't avoid this because it is a topic that we don't think about or we don't think we need to think about maybe yet. But we are in the business of talking about hard things, right? And having uncomfortable
Exactly.
conversations. That's what we do for a living.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we can do this too. So this is the business coach in me can't help this part. You have an active private practice that you've had about as long as I've had mine,
I do.
right? And that's
Yeah.
still going. You're still doing that.
It is. It is still going because I love it. And I haven't taken new people for a while as I've tried to make room for this other project. But I still have about a half time.
It is really something, and to that you have found yourself, I'm guessing, pretty unexpectedly starting a whole nother business at this stage of the game that I'm guessing is kind of taken off. Is that true? Is it? Are you getting
It,
some?
it,
Yeah.
we are finding our footing and people are really excited about us. It is a new
Yeah.
way of thinking about this topic because, as you said, most of us want to avoid it. Those who
Hmm.
are willing to think about it at all have a traditional way of doing it that evolved in our field because of a lack of other options. And it's hard to consider doing it in a new way, but a way
Yeah.
that is much more comprehensive and really encourages people to think about all the aspects of their practice, every little bit from patient care to your billing to your computer to your office, your lease, and
Hmm.
many other things we'll get to. But
Okay.
people think that it's maybe not a big deal, but it's a pretty important and complex endeavor, and important for all of us to think about.
So we're going to dig into in some detail what it means to have a professional will and what it means to have a plan
Mhm.
for how to manage your practice or how someone else may have to manage your practice in the event that something happens to you. Um, if you've been in the field for any length of time, somewhere along the way you've been to a workshop, if you've heard this concept somewhere, but we really don't talk about it a lot. Before we get into the specifics, and I do want to do that, can you, this was unexpected for you. Can you just tell us a little bit about like how the heck did you find yourself here? Like where did this start for you? I'd
Yeah.
love to hear that.
Absolutely. It is a bit of a detour. As I said, I am happy in my practice and I could be content just continuing to do that. But a number of years ago, my closest colleague and psychologist friend and peer supervision partner of 17 years
Mm,
got sick and I had to step in. And we had made the arrangement that lots of people make years before that, even where we said, all right, we know we need to make a will. Let's
yeah.
find one on the internet and I'll be yours and you be mine and we'll sign it for each other. And we put that in a drawer and didn't talk about it for a decade
Mm,
until or for 17 years, in fact, we didn't talk about that until I got a phone call from her saying, they found a tumor. I'm in the hospital. You need to take my practice.
oh, wow.
And she died 6 weeks later.
Wow.
So
Mm,
from that moment, she was not in contact with her patients because she was so incapacitated right from the start with pain and with medication and with hospitalization and surgeries
wow.
and all kinds of things that even though we had a little bit of time, she couldn't do that work herself to bring her practice to a close and to terminate her patients. And so
So it was sudden for her clients as well,
it
right?
was
I mean, like
sudden,
no real warning.
no
Mm,
warning at all.
mm,
And so I, you
mm.
know, did have the opportunity to talk with her and get instructions from her about, how she wanted me to contact her patients and what their particular needs were, and who they might be good matches,
Like
who
to
might be
refer them
good
out.
for
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I was able to use her guidance to step in and do that. But it was an incredibly painful experience for me because my very close friend was dying.
Yeah.
And I had to put aside as best as I could my own emotion to be able to be present for her patients and tell 30 people, one after
Mm.
the other. She wanted, everybody's unique, but she wanted her patients to be told the hard, cold fact of the matter. She didn't
Mm.
want people to wonder what happened to her or
Yeah.
maybe she'll get better. She
Yeah.
wanted me to say to every person, she has been diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer and
Mm.
she's not available to be to her patients anymore.
Wow.
And I would say this and then hang up and cry
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it was so touching and moving to hear patients' reactions and to try and be there for them in a supportive way.
Mm.
But it was really
Mm.
a very difficult job, as well as then, finding them referrals and then all the administrative matters around billing and the practical practice kinds of issues that came later. So this job was really all consuming over
Can I
the course
ask,
of a 2 month period.
was she in a solo practice? Was she in a practice with you? Was she in a group? Like, what was the setup?
Solo.
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 So it's
Mhm.
just her. There's nobody down the hall that was familiar with her practice or an administrator in the building that was used to, like,
She
whatever.
shared
Mm.
office space with people who were colleagues and
Mm.
friendly colleagues for a long
Yeah.
time, but I was the designated person in the
Got it.
professional will, and our relationship had her, lean on me with confidence, which I'm so honored to have had and
Yeah.
honored to have been able to do this for her. But a year later, in still coming to terms with my grief after she died and with this experience, which was really just the hardest thing I've ever
Mm.
had to do, I think. I
Mm.
wrote a paper about it, really just processing my grief on the anniversary of her death. And that led
Mm.
to other opportunities and stories. Somebody asked me to give a talk. So I did that. And then to training for other
Yeah.
psychologists. And then
Yeah.
the reactions I got were, oh my gosh, I've never thought about these things. And I don't
Mm.
know who I would turn to and who would do this for me. And I didn't
Yeah.
realize. And then very suddenly, another close friend faced an incapacitation and
Wow.
thankfully got better. But we didn't know that at the start
Mm-hmm.
and was unavailable for patients for several months. And so I had to do the
Several
same thing,
months.
months.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
So it started off with the same thing, telling people there's been a sudden um, situation. She's
Yeah.
unavailable, and I
Yeah.
needed to keep track of them over weeks and months. Some wanted to be referred out, and some wanted to stay and wait
Mm.
until she recovered. But the these were young women in their 40s, both of them,
Yeah. Mm.
seemingly healthy and beautiful and vibrant, and
Mm.
not people we would imagine we would ever need to do this for. And so
Yeah.
it really hit home to me.
Mm.
And I will mention one other factor, which is right after that first experience taking care of my friend's practice, then I was diagnosed with an
Oh,
illness
goodness.
that, because I had been through so much with her, mine really felt like no big deal. I can handle this. But I did have to take some time off from work, from the
Wow.
office. And it just reinforced the sense that, despite our defenses, we are all
Mm.
vulnerable. We just cannot predict or control. And so I have come to believe that of course we can't predict and control getting sick, and we can't, feel guilty for it or anything. It will
Yeah.
happen to
Yeah.
all of us.
Yeah.
But we can prevent traumatic loss for our patients. And I think we owe it to them because we use our relationship, we build the relationship to be a vehicle for change. It's part of what
Yeah.
we count on to be helpful to people. And then I believe, having seen these traumatized people
Mm.
get this news, that we have to be responsible enough to consider the opposite effect, that if we are suddenly gone, suddenly taken from them, that
Yeah.
there can be a real negative impact. And so
Yeah.
we owe it to them to have a plan for how they would be handled in a responsible manner. Of course, they're going to still feel loss. We can't prevent that, but we
Right.
can prevent traumatic loss.
Right. And you've already brought up something that I hadn't thought of, which is not just what happens if something, God forbid, you should pass away, you should die, but also if you were just disabled in some way or out for a long illness or, something else that takes you away from your practice suddenly, or maybe not suddenly, but it's coming, whatever. Yeah, that's an important point. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about different scenarios where I've seen things like this happen. I've had colleagues that developed conditions that were going to impact their practice, over time, and where they needed to make a hard decision and start moving away. And I've also, just in the last year, and this is probably a reflection of my age because I've also been in practice for so long I can't remember at this point. But a lot of people that I've known my whole adult life are beginning to die or to age out in various ways. And I've just heard about two colleagues, one really actually two completely and totally unexpected that I had no idea that have passed away just in the last few months, actually. And I know that one of those, I don't know what happened. The other one I do know was quite sudden. And the only reason I know that is because another colleague of mine was seeing that person's clients who had seen him the week before or a couple of weeks before. And
Yes.
just like that. Yeah. So you went through a really, really tough thing, that was, and kept going. I mean, it's striking to me that you've had to deal with this so much. I sort of feel for you, Robyn, that you've had to do this, but I also applaud you for not just turning this into a story that you tell that's about something you went through, but that you are doing what good healers do, which is you are transforming that experience into a service to help other people, which is beautiful and powerful. And I wanted to sort of recognize that for a second and honor that. Okay.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, for real. So, because things happen and not everybody turns around and goes, all right, I got to do something with this. This is important. And, it's not easy. I know it's not easy. It's so much easier to just keep doing what you've always done. So thank you for sharing that. Tell us, so let's talk about some of the specifics. What is a professional will at all? Like what does that even mean? Literally. How's that different from any other will you might have?
Before I answer that question, I
Yeah.
want to say a bit about what happens when you don't have a
Okay, great. I
professional.
was going to ask you that too. I'm happy to
Okay,
start there.
because it frames why you
Yeah.
need one.
Yeah.
So I have interviewed lots of therapists whose therapist has suddenly died.
Mm.
And they, being the patient in that situation, are able to talk about their experience both from, the knowledge of being a therapist themselves, but then having
Yeah.
the person they rely on suddenly abandoned.
Yeah.
So I interviewed 15 of them. I've also talked to now lots and lots of people as I've delivered the news myself
Yeah.
directly to them. But
Hmm.
these people that I've interviewed that were not, related to my duties as a practice executor, they have shared with me that some never were notified by anyone. They knocked on the door, they left messages for 3 weeks,
Oh,
didn't
wow.
receive a call back. One person told me, I thought my therapist gave up on me after all that
Oh,
time. And
Mm.
after many, many weeks later, finally a colleague had called and notified her that her therapist had died. But
Mm.
for several months at that point, she didn't know and felt that it was something about her. She really felt
Wow.
abandoned and felt like this was because she was no good. Other
Mm.
people told me stories about getting messages by text from a friend who heard about it through the therapist community and said, "Oh, hey, I'm so sorry." And they would say, "Well, sorry for what? What are you talking about?" "Oh my God, you don't know? Your therapist died."
Oh my
Um, you
gosh.
know,
Mm.
horrible, horrible situations people found out on listservs. People did have sometimes an administrator from the practice call, but they reported, seemed so overwhelmed and distressed themselves and didn't
Oh
have any
dear.
information to provide and said they would call back but never did. All kinds of terrible situations where patients are just left in the lurch. Either they
Mm.
learn shocking news in a really very painful way, or they're not told, or they're not provided with referrals, or they're just left kind of not trusting the profession anymore
Wow.
because they're kind of like, what happened here? I trusted this person and there's just nothing in
Mm.
place. So another piece, that's like the patient perspective.
Yeah.
The other piece is about the ethics and the legal obligations that we all have as clinicians regarding confidentiality of medical records in particular, but also in many all disciplines have this in our ethics code that we have the duty to plan for facilitating services for our patients in the event of our sudden practice closure, whether that's because of moving or dying,
Yeah.
illness, anything. We have that duty, and we have the duty to protect confidentiality and medical records. And different states have different pieces of that enacted into law.
Hmm.
And so that, does pertain to your particular jurisdiction, but the overarching ethics are the same for all of us. And the other thing that can happen is,
Mm.
earlier today in a
Wow.
conversation, someone told me about a story they had heard where a therapist's widow, unintentionally or unaware, put boxes of files that had been stored in the basement for
Oh
many
dear.
years out in the recycle. Then there
Oh.
was a storm, terrible windstorm. They found records, medical records, therapy records spread across the neighborhood.
Oh my gosh.
The board was called, the licensing board. I mean, this is horrible, horrible
Mm.
for patients, horrible kind of, for the practice
Wow.
legacy of this devoted therapist who had, cared for his practice for so long. But
Oh my
these things
gosh.
happen because when we don't have a plan in place, people come in and want to get rid of our stuff, and it's not their responsibility to know what to
Yeah.
do, and we can't control what happens after that. So
Mm.
those are the things that happen without a will. So
And that's the kind of thing that I like. If somebody told me that, they're like, "Oh, come on!" Like, what are the odds? And yet, you've heard that story because that actually happened. Like,
yes,
I mean, there's a part of me that's kind of like, "Are you kidding me? Like, would you not
I am
know
not
not to
kidding
let?"
you.
But if that's possible, then there's no telling what else is possible too, for
Um,
countless reasons, I'm sure. But still, wow, wow. Okay, so 1,000 things can go wrong that you may not even occur to you, like things that we assume other people would know not to do, they don't, or we
they
assume people would
do.
know to do and they don't. Whatever.
Yeah, they don't. I
Wow.
mean, I talked to someone yesterday who has 40 boxes of records in his basement, and he's working with me to put a plan together. But he's saying, like, well, what happens if something happens to me before we have this good plan in place?
Mm,
Who's good? What are they going to do? Who's going to, take care of
yeah.
these records? Where are they going to go? This is real, especially for, in that sense, old paper records for our baby boomer and therapists who didn't make the switch to electronic health records.
Yeah.
That is a particular vulnerability and
Yeah.
liability. But as well, younger folks too, things happen at any time. And even with EHR, there's a risk of exposure to your computers, if someone gets access, if they're on the cloud, if, all
Mm-hmm.
these things that we take good precautions to ensure when we're here, when we're
Yep.
living, but we don't know what might happen. And
Yeah.
like I said before, only 1 in 15 people that I interviewed there knew what happened to his medical records. So think of
Wow.
the other 14 patients are left kind of going, all right, well, I don't know. I was in therapy for all that time, but I'll never know what happened to my stories, where they
Mm,
are. It's a
mm,
very vulnerable thing to know that
yeah.
they're out there, maybe somewhere you don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Um, I do think it's helpful to think about the dangers of not having this in place. The things that it doesn't occur to us could happen. What about the impact on billing, finances, the family's finances that are left behind, the office space that you rent, your colleagues who have been counting on you? What about the financial ramifications of not having a will?
Smart, smart question. So you may have uncollected bills. If you are an out-of-pocket provider, you may not have billed or received collection. So then your estate is not going to get payment for services you've already rendered. There may be insurance submissions that are in progress that may or may not happen. Patients may not receive the paperwork that they need to seek reimbursement if they have already paid, so they may be out a lot
Yeah.
of money, more than expected. Your estate may be at risk and liability for issues like breach of confidentiality and the practice as the inheritors of your practice. There may be financial responsibility
Mm,
that transfers to them. That piece aside, well, before I move on, that you said the
yeah.
lease.
Yeah.
So my friend who passed away was in a suite with a number of people who all were very heartbroken at her loss, but money's money,
Yeah.
and her part of the rent needed to be covered.
Yeah.
And they required her husband to continue paying her rent
Wow.
for many months until they were able to find someone to take that office over. So
And that
now
probably was hard for them to say and hard for him to do and probably felt bad.
I felt really, really enraged. I wanted to
Yeah.
intervene and make this better. This grieving
Yeah.
family, now loss of a loved one, loss of an income, and now
Wow.
you have to pay for an office that no one is using on top of it.
Mm,
So, you need to kind of think about what you would want done in that event. I actually was able to negotiate in my lease that I started following that experience. I negotiated a clause that says if I were incapacitated, they would release my estate from the lease within 90 days. So,
goodness.
um, these do have consequences. All of our business dealings that we don't think of, someone needs to cancel your Zoom and your email and your Psychology Today and your malpractice insurance and
Your
tell the
simple
board
practice
and
or whatever.
yeah, your
Yeah.
EHR,
Yeah.
all the things that are monies being sent out, you have to think about. And the other piece that I was going to add about the family is the emotional burden and pain when there isn't someone to be the go-between them and the patients of the practice, because the
Mm,
patients will reach out. They want information. They want to know what happened. They
yeah.
want to know who should they see next? Where do I get my paperwork? Where's my
Yeah.
file? And they also have deep grief. One of those people I interviewed said he kept calling the therapist's wife because he wanted to know where the grave was because
Oh
he
my
wanted to
gosh.
go and mourn his therapist. So I can understand that with empathy from the patient's point of view,
Mm,
but think about the grieving wife who now is fielding calls from the
wow.
deceased spouse's patients saying,
Wow.
hey, where's the grave? Right. While you're in the midst of coping with this great personal tragedy. So,
You do
a
not want your spouse handling this stuff, or
no,
your partner, or your brother,
no.
or what. You do not want a family member having to deal with your clients. That's
Even if they are a clinician,
wow.
which happens sometimes, they say,
Yeah.
"Oh, my partner, my daughter, they're a therapist too. They'll handle it."
Mm,
No, don't put
mm,
this on them.
mm.
Allow them the opportunity to grieve the way they need to grieve and
Yeah, and I
honor
want to
your
put a little
patient.
pin in something that you said there that I just want to capture real quick. You've already given us a little nugget that I would never have thought of, which is that piece about negotiating to put a clause in your lease to let you out. I have never even thought about that. I have no idea what my lease says about that. My assumption would be that if something happened to me, the lease would end, that it would end, but maybe not. So that's because so many people do rent from a practice or from an office building. Wow. Okay. I just wanted to highlight that real quick before we
Yeah,
got too far
yeah.
from that. This is, these are the kind of things no one thinks about. Gee whiz. Okay. Okay. So, lots of unintended consequences if you don't have a system in place, and I'm guessing a person in place who knows how to access that system and do what needs to be done. That's the piece that you're going to fill in for us. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So
Good.
let me talk about the will first, and then we'll
Okay.
talk about who's going to do it for you.
Okay.
The will, and it's not even a legal term, really, professional will. Our field has kind of made that up. It is
Mm,
not a contract. It is not your last will and testament. It is not speaking about your assets. It's really a list of instructions that you have prepared for your estate who is automatically, responsible then if you are deceased for your practice, but they don't know what to do with your practice. So it's a set of instructions. If something happens to me, this is the person I want you to turn to, who I have trust will know how to handle my patients. These are the ways I want my patients handled. These are the ways I want them referred out. These are the aspects of my practice that need to be managed. And you
yeah.
spell it all out in this written document that it communicates not only your wishes that are so unique to all of us, and the nitty gritty comes down to, you know, would you want your patients to be told of your condition, as my friend did, in great detail? Would you just want them told a medical issue or an accident? That's an
Mm-hmm.
individual decision. And if you don't decide and write it down, somebody else is going to decide.
Yeah.
Likewise, would you want patients to be able to attend a memorial service? Because they will ask. They will
Mm,
ask, what happened? Can I come?
yeah.
Am I allowed?
Yeah.
And again, if you have a preference, you want to make that known because your practice executor, the person who's going to do these things for you,
Yeah.
can handle your practice in a way that's consistent with how you've operated as a therapist, that
Yeah.
is going to hold the frame for your patients, that is going to communicate a steadiness for them, rather than somebody else who comes in and makes all new rules and is, a
Right.
totally different
Right.
and jarring sort of
Mm-hmm.
presence for them. So the will specifies, how do you want them notified? To whom do you want them referred? Do you have supervisees or colleagues you would want notified? Do you provide testing? Do you have a teaching appointment? What about your records? Where do you keep them? Are they paper? Are they in EHR? Who has
Right.
the key? Where is it located? Who knows the passwords? What happens when you change your passwords? Are you going to remember to
Yeah.
update them every time they change? What happens with two-factor authentication, where even if someone has your passwords, they're going to ping your phone or
Oh my
your
gosh.
email with a code. How is that person going to get the code
Oh
to
my gosh.
access your EHR?
Wow.
If you call the EHR, if you were to call Simple Practice and say, hey, I am serving for Robyn Miller and I need access to her files, they're going to say, get me a death certificate and show me the professional will. And that's going to take weeks. So for
Mm.
weeks, you're not going to have the patient's contact information to be able to notify them. So
Wow.
all these things are so important to consider how the person who is going to take on this responsibility
Mm-hmm.
will get that information as soon as possible.
Yeah.
With, for me at least, the most important goal being contacting current patients
Yeah.
as quickly as possible
Yeah.
to minimize the people who are showing up at your door and you're not there, or the people
Yeah.
who are on Zoom and wondering what happened to you. Those people need to be told in order, preferably ahead of time, as
Yeah.
best and as quickly as
Yeah.
possible.
That's like first aid. Like that's the very first step in the first aid, right? That's the
Exactly.
crisis.
Triage.
Yeah, triage. I had forgotten about this, but you've just reminded me. There was a psychiatrist in our community who disappeared. This is many, many years ago when I was serving on an advisory committee to a local managed care organization, and he was somebody that was one of the providers of the network of this particular company. And like it had just happened right when we were having a meeting. I'm like, what happened? And patients showed up and there was a sign on the door that he had closed his practice. Nothing happened to him. It was a legal financial thing. And eventually, like years later, he showed back up and started back up again. I don't know how all that happened, but I do
Mm,
remember us talking about what do you mean? Like patients literally showed up and there was a note on the door, the practice was closed
yes.
and no indication about where to go, what to do. And he was a prescriber. So these were people with medication issues, right?
Right.
I'd
And
forgotten all
he,
about that. I just remembered that because I remember as a colleague, we were pretty dismissive of it, like how unprofessional and how awful that was that he did that to his clients because it wasn't a medical thing. But it's the same issue. Like you don't want those people, like this could be a matter like the very next day, like as soon as possible, you got to get this out there. So that's a really, really good
exactly.
point. Yeah. Mm.
Exactly. Yes. I had an experience of, one of my patients, a young patient, his father had just been talking to me and telling me how his therapist was amazing and she was helping him through this bitter divorce and he was so grateful. And then the next week, I saw an obituary that the therapist had suddenly died. And I
Goodness.
didn't know if he knew. And so I did call him and said, this is not about your child. So, don't worry about that, but go somewhere private and call me back. I have something to share with you.
Yeah.
And I informed him, and he was sobbing. And he said he
Mm,
had gone to the office and seen a note on the door that
mm.
said, please call this other psychologist. And he never did. He thought, oh, she must have just had an emergency. I'll show up again next week.
Oh
And
dear.
so no one was going to call him and inform
Uh,
him and assist him. It was on him. And so how many patients, maybe never called and never
mm.
found out. The case that you're talking about is abandonment. I mean, that's
Yeah,
clear
true.
violation of
Yeah.
our ethics. But patients will feel it, as you said. They'll feel it
Yeah.
the same way, even if it's, of course, not our fault or
Correct. Yep.
intentional.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have a duty. You
Hmm.
have a duty as the person, as the clinician in this case, for your people to make sure that you set things up so there is as little disruption as possible, and so that things are handled as humanely as possible. So
Exactly. Yes,
that's
it's
really,
like
really, really important. Yeah.
an extension of being compassionate, of being empathic, of being
Hmm.
holding space, of all the things that we value, attunement, just thinking in mind. So, of the people that I interviewed, not all the stories were bad. There were
Yeah.
about three people who told me they did get phone calls from colleagues who told them what happened in very empathic, sensitive manner, answered their questions, offered them referrals.
Mm.
And those people were, quite sad and devastated by the loss of their therapist, but they said, I think my therapist handled it beautifully. I felt really touched and honored that my therapist cared enough about me to have planned for someone to tell me. And some of the other people who didn't get those calls were enraged, saying, I can't believe this person that I have trusted just left me in the lurch like this.
Wow.
We impact people.
Yep. So a will is not actually a legal document, really, in the way we think of a will. It's a checklist. Okay.
It's a checklist. And you then appoint someone who's going to do these things. And the standard or the tradition is, like I said, you ask a colleague and you write their name down. But unless they sign that as well, it's not a contract. I could say Barbie is going to be my professional executor and I want her to do X, Y, and Z. What good is that piece of paper? None. And so even if you appoint a colleague who, says, sure, I'll do it, there's no promise there that they will do it. And even with the best of intentions, that there's no guarantee they will be available. Maybe they're out of the country. Maybe they're dealing with their own crisis. You just don't know. And so this will is important to have, but and so people recommend that lawyers write it for you or look at that, and people might spend $1,500 to $3,000 to have the lawyer write this up, but it's just still a piece of paper at that point. The lawyer's not going to do it for you, and in some states they could, but I don't recommend it. I really feel very strongly that this person should be a clinician. I would not want to, in consulting.
You mean you could have a lawyer that handles it for you, right?
You could have a lawyer, yes. And in meeting with an attorney, he said, Robyn, this is an administrative matter. An attorney can handle this for you. A family member can handle this for you. And I say, no, this is a clinical matter. You are calling and notifying bereaved people who need to be handled with clinical sensitivity. They need it to be provided by referrals from someone who knows how to do that and is tapped into a community. The records, like I've already said, someone who knows the rules needs to handle that. So I strongly, strongly recommend that your person is a clinical therapist, and you're going to, put all those wishes in the will, and you're going to name someone. So let's move to that if we can.
Yeah.
So as I did it for my friend, I think many of us think not only is that sort of the only model we've ever heard about, but we also think, I would want someone who knows me well to be the one to do this for my dear patients. And I get that. And I did that. And I think in many ways I did a good job.
There's a bet coming.
Yes. However, I don't think it's a good standard of care. Like I said, I was grieving so much. I did not necessarily have the clarity of mind to, make the best clinical decisions I might have made had I not been in that state. And it also, like I said, was a tremendous burden that interfered with being able to grieve, and also meant my practice was put on hold for a period of time, and my family was neglected for a period of time, because as you listeners think about who would this person be for you, is anyone who pops into mind going to have a free 50 or 60 hours to devote to this in the next 2 weeks?
Wow.
Probably not. People are busy. And there's just a lot that falls through the cracks because of the lack of resources that anyone might have. So I do recommend against a close colleague. If it's someone further out in your orbit who agrees to do this for you, that is reasonable, but you need to be aware of a couple of problems with that.
Okay.
One, again, is, you would want that to be a contract. You would want to know for sure they're going to do it. And if they aren't available, who's going to take their place? You want to talk about compensation because it's a huge job, and someone outside your circle is not going to devote that amount of time
Hmm.
and effort without being compensated. So
Really, I
a
wouldn't have thought of that
lot
either.
a
Yeah.
lot of people write in their wills, my estate will pay you your hourly rate for time spent
Wow.
serving as practice executor. But the reason they say that is because they think it's going to take 2 or 3 or 4 hours. And they think, sure,
Mm.
my estate will spend a couple $100 to have
Mm.
someone help. They do not realize what we are talking about with the full practice 20, 30 patients. We are
Yeah.
talking 40, 50, 60 hours of work. So your estate is going to get an unexpected $10 or $15,000 bill
Wow.
if you make
Okay.
that agreement.
Okay.
So think
Hmm.
about that. There are alternatives. You can set a flat fee agreement. You can agree to make a donation.
Hmm.
You can do lots of things, but you need to think about it and spell it out what that
Okay.
agreement is going to
Wouldn't
be.
have thought of that. That's brilliant to
And
hear
if you're going
that.
to
Yeah.
pay them, put that money aside so that your estate at the moment of losing you and losing your income doesn't have to come up with that money
Okay.
as well.
Okay.
So then the next option would be to put a group together, a cooperative group of colleagues who all come together to agree to do this for one another. Everybody
Hmm.
would help if any one person
Hmm.
suffered the incapacitation or death. So that is better in that it shares the burden.
Never heard of that. That's brilliant also. Huh. Okay.
But again, there's a couple issues. You have to
Mm-hmm.
be very, very clear and very specific about who is agreeing to do what, how
Mm-hmm.
they are going to communicate with one another so that things don't get lost. Someone thought the other person got the files, someone thought the other person
So
made the phone
clearly
calls.
delineated roles and tasks, something like that. Okay.
Very, very clear. And then another concern is if your practice is within a community and these are people in the community, you don't know whether your patients will know some of those colleagues in a social manner. So that there may be a violation of confidentiality if, the other folks in your community are helping to reach out to your patients.
Hmm.
So those are some challenges, but that
Okay.
I think is a better way to do it if you have that kind of community of people who can commit to that. There are a lot of pieces that would have to get done. I consulted with a group of 4 who went around on a field trip to see one another's offices, to see where
Huh.
the files are kept, where the keys are kept. And then they decided, no way, this is too much.
Really? Oh,
And
wow.
and and they decided not to do it. But,
Huh.
it's a better thought.
I think that's a creative
Then,
idea. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And so then, because none of these options are terrific, and because of the reactions that I've gotten in training therapists on this over the past couple of years, I've done a lot of talking about it, and the reactions are always the same. Oh my God, I've never thought about this. I never heard about this. You're stressing me out. I don't know who to ask.
Good. Then maybe you'll do something about it. Yeah.
My people have retired, the people I was close to. I don't know anyone anymore. All of these kinds of things that are very real and understandable. And so
Yeah.
that was what compelled me to think about what is a solution? How do we solve these problems? And really racked my brain hard on that and came up with what I think is a pretty good plan. We're always looking to refine it, but with my partner, Evan, we have put together a pretty fail safe, low stress way of taking care of this feeling peace of mind so that each therapist doesn't have to continue to feel the burden, the guilt that I know I need to do it, but I haven't done
Yeah.
it because it's so hard. You
Yeah.
can just do it with an hour and a half to 2 hours of your time, and you can outsource this to people who know how to do it rather
Yeah.
than searching the internet or trying to figure it out yourself, just like we
Yeah.
do with billing or with our legal needs. Our EHRs, we kind of say, hey, I need some help and it's worth it. It's worth
Yeah.
my stress to pay someone who knows how to do this to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So the service we developed is one where we meet with therapists who want to enroll. We meet for an hour. We really want to understand you and your practice and you as a therapist, how you relate to your patients, what kinds of people you see, how long you see them,
Hmm.
what's your orientation. We want to know you the way we would know a colleague within our
Yeah.
own orbit. We
Yeah.
want to understand how you work. And then we get into the nitty gritty about what you would want, who you would want them referred to, all those details about appointments and who should be notified. We get into your billing, how you would want that handled, what is your system, how would we access that, whether it's an EHR or even for paper records. We do have developed, we initially weren't going to be able to serve people with paper records because we can't obviously go everywhere and take everybody's
Right.
banker boxes full of records like I did for my friend.
I'm thinking about a few boxes I have in the attic.
Yes. Well, I do recommend if anybody has boxes and boxes that are outside the retention period, if you
Yeah, I
no
don't.
longer
Yeah.
legally
Yeah.
need to hold them, get rid of them, shred them
Yeah.
in a HIPAA compliant manner. But the ones that you do need to hold, if they're paper, we work with a company that will digitize them, and then we can take custody of them and
Wow.
as an option. So we come up with a plan that is really individualized to each person's needs. Some folks have paper calendars, so we say, okay, in the event that something happens to you, who's going to notify us, first of all? Who is your
Yeah.
personal representative and your alternate? Who's going to call us and tell us?
Y'all
And
notice that she said personal rep and an alternate, and you've said that twice now, where
Mhm.
you mentioned you identify somebody and a backup, somebody, and because
Yes.
I've had that thought too, because you may set this up and it be years later that you end up using it. You know, it could be 20 years, things change, right? So yeah, person and an alternate. I just want to highlight that. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And,
Yeah.
yes, a lot of
Uh,
us, think our spouse will be that person, but, if there were an accident and you're together,
right. Right.
who
Or you've
else
got a
is going to
divorce
do it?
or,
Yeah,
I mean, lots of things, life changes, right? So
of
yeah.
course. Of course. So we get all that information and then we include in that an airtight plan about how we're going to get access, all the things I mentioned before, the two-factor authentication, where we're going to find it, the EHR. We work up a
Hmm.
very, very detailed plan. We provide that in a written will that's been legally approved. We make it a contract where we are appointed as the practice executor. So we are promising that in the event of an incapacitation or death, we will step in and do all of these things that you have
Hmm.
specified and that we have agreed to. And so once we put that in the will and you sign it and we can amend it if necessary, then we're on retainer for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything were to happen, you know that your practice will be taken care of by an experienced clinician who
Yeah.
will know how to serve your patients and meet their needs, who will spare your family and your close colleagues from having to deal with the overwhelming stress of this at a
Hmm.
time of grief. And you also spare them any financial unexpected liability. The way we work is it's a yearly membership fee. It's like car insurance in the sense
Yeah.
of, you
Yeah.
pay us to keep us on retainer. And then if anything happens and we have to step in, there are no charges for all of that clinical work interacting with your patients and for
Wow.
retaining the records. So you
Yeah, I
pay it up
saw
front.
somebody on your website, somebody had one of your testimonials, somebody said it's like having practice insurance.
Yeah,
Um, and I
yeah,
thought that's a
safety
great
net.
metaphor. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Which brings up a question real quick I wanted to ask you. Like the story you told us about the windstorm and the woman who'd set out the paper records. And I do think as time goes on, there will be fewer and fewer paper records,
Yeah.
but it still happens. Um, for in a case like that, could the estate be sued for that breach of confidentiality or for that loss? Yeah. For there
They
wasn't a
they
custody. Yeah.
Yeah, they can be. In that case, I believe they were not because, of course we think, well, the person is dead,
Yeah.
who's really responsible. But there are situations where the estate could be held liable. So it
That's what I
is
was wondering.
important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it
Because
happens very often, but it is
you hope
a
not.
risk.
You hope not. But I would hate to think that your family would have to deal with something legally because you didn't have everything buttoned up properly. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So you have put this service together of being a practice executor, and plus you help people put the plan together, the will together, all the details. Um, I cannot even imagine, Robyn, what it's taken for you to create this. Like just because as you're saying this, I'm thinking, how the heck do you do that for like even like when you were just talking about paper calendars, for which is a way of seeing what clients they're still seeing that you
Right.
need to notify, right? I, in my business coaching work, I hammer home all the time the importance of having online scheduling because there are all kinds of reasons why that's just a better way to do things. But so I mean, I have sort of a minimum kind of a paper calendar, but most of my stuff is online. But if you are one of those people, like so many I talk to are like, I don't want to do that. And you're still working with you know, a notebook you bought at Office Depot. Um, how
I
would
mean, I
you?
have to say, I don't want to be hypocritical. Here is my little calendar book that is paper. I'm not blaming anybody or accusing you.
She's holding up her calendar, y'all. It's
We
very
will
funny.
figure out how to do what needs to be done. So, like in that case, we come up with the agreement. Will your personal representative go find your calendar and take a picture of your upcoming weeks and
Mm,
email it to us in a secure way so that we
yeah,
can look at who's coming and who we need to
yeah,
call like
yeah,
tomorrow?
yeah, yeah,
We
yeah,
will come up with the plan.
yeah. Well, when you mentioned the company that digitizes records, I thought, well, how would you do that if, they're in Kansas? I mean, how do you get a box of files to them to digitize? How do you
So
do that?
they have it's a national company, and if you wish, they can provide banker boxes. They can have them sent
Mm,
to you with a shipping label if they aren't close enough to pick it up, although they are in a lot of areas where they can arrange to pick up the
okay.
files. But they give you a banker box. You take your files, you put them in there. You don't have to do anything to them. You just put them in there as long as the patient's name is on the tab of the files.
Hmm.
They put it through these massive scanners that take photos of the front and back of every page.
Wow.
They put it on a file that is cataloged by patient name so
Hmm.
that you can, if you continue to practice, but you just want to get this done,
Yeah.
you can get into that digital file and find each patient's
Hmm.
file if that needed to be transferred later, if you needed access to it. And so
Yeah.
sometimes what we do is encourage people to do that for their archived patient files that still need to
Yeah.
be retained. But
Yeah.
then they might continue on keeping paper records for people that they continue to see. And so
Hmm.
then we also have an agreement that, okay, if then at the time of an incident, who's going to get those paper files and digitize them so that we can
Yeah.
also get custody of those last bits. And so we try to think of everything that might
Yeah. For
be
real.
left.
It's impressive what you have put together. It's impressive.
Oh, thank you.
I would just think like there's so many things that are popping into my head. I'm thinking like, well, first of all, this is a really good reason to stay on top of your records and make sure that you have destroyed the ones that you are no longer legally required to have. And just a quick aside, I've been in practice for like 25, 30 years, and I had one of the things that I was told a long time ago is that when you see kids, you have to hold those records until 7 years after they turn 21. And as you're seeing 3-year-olds, this is in Tennessee, at least, this is a long time ago. And I used to do a lot of work with kids. So I had all these old records that I'd had to keep forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, And there was a time when I had a really, really robust practice for many, many years. And I have, for a long time, had a ritual of at the end of the year, as part of my over the holidays transition from one year to the next, would go through my filing cabinets and I would pull out anybody that was at the 7-year mark. And I would shred that. And in our group practice, I'm just sharing this, guys, because this might be a tip for you guys in other ways. And when I had a full practice, a group practice where I had 10 or 12 providers most of the time, once a year, we had everybody do that. And we would have a shredding truck come to the practice and just do a whole bunch of it all at once, which was a huge way of staying on top of that. At some point in the last couple of years, as I moved my practice home during the pandemic, I went through a big purge where my practice has gotten a lot smaller. I just had a lot of old stuff. I did a burn. I was going to burn a bunch of it because it was going to take me forever to shred them, and I didn't want to take them anywhere. It took me like 8 or 9 hours to burn these records. 8 or 9 hours. And I was super, 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 super careful about how I handled that. Very, very, very careful. I mean, not just from a fire perspective, but like I made sure that they really, you can't do that, y'all, because the papers don't all burn. You'll have these stacks of paper, and if you're not careful, you'll have them blowing around. Like there's all kinds of crazy things that happen. But my main point here, and also I don't put patient names on records. I never have. I've always had initials and a number. So you couldn't look, because I learned that from somebody early on. If my filing cabinet was open when you walked into my office, you would have no idea who those people were. Or if I had a file laying out on my desk. So I've never had patient names on things.
Okay.
And
So
in
then
my
you have
calendar,
to make sure that your person knows the code, because otherwise they won't know the names.
Inside the files, it's there. It's
Oh,
there,
I
but
see.
not on the external part of the folder. And then when I did have a paper calendar, I never had anything but their first name and an initial, right? So I've just done all these things to protect confidentiality over the years. It does its job. It does it. But if somebody who doesn't know came in, I mean, it would not necessarily be easy, because I've made sure it wouldn't be.
Right. The code you have to share with somebody. They have to know how to decipher your method.
Make sure. So lots of good reasons to both, one, just stay on top of your records as you go. Don't wait to the end. And I like your point about archival stuff, that part of just kind of, this is just sort of a good thing in general, is just to make sure that you're on top of your records, period, in your family too. But anyway, lots of good reasons to maintain the housekeeping of your practice. One thing I do want to ask, I want to be careful about our time. We could talk about this a long time, I think. What are, like, okay, Robyn, you've got me thinking. I'm going to try to cover all those things. I can make a checklist about all this stuff. I'll stick it somewhere, hand it to my spouse, whatever, make sure somebody has it. What are some of the mistakes people may make if they do this on their own versus having somebody like you who has been through this quite a bit at this point and learned a lot? What are some of the risks of being y'all, I want to be careful here. Robyn is the first, as far as I know, first person in the country who's done this. And I'm sure there will be others coming along once you've started this ball, right? And I think I told you, Rob, when we met before, that I remember the first time I ever saw an ad at a conference for an electronic records, thinking, well, that's kind of weird. What an idea that is. And it was so radical at the time, and now those are everywhere, right? This seems a little radical right now, but at some point, I bet you there'll be a lot of this out there. For those who are like, you've got my attention, I am going to pay attention to this. But I'm going to try to do it myself. What are the pros and cons of that? What are the risks of that? Why do they need somebody like your company to help them with that? And if they don't do it, what do they need to be careful about? I think that's kind of what I want to get to.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can do it yourself. I'm glad if you're thinking about it in any capacity, it's better to
Yeah.
have something than nothing. So fine,
Please do.
start somewhere.
Yeah.
And there are templates available on the internet. The main risk is that they are generic, so they're not necessarily going to cover all the things that you do in your practice and that would be important for you to think about. You can hire an attorney, like I said. That is, a way of making sure you have a more comprehensive document than from a template. But it's
Mm.
expensive
Yeah.
to do that, and that doesn't have much to do with who is going to actually do it
Yeah.
for you. I think one of the biggest challenges that people face is really leaving the detailed
Yeah.
enough
Yeah.
information so that someone can get access, because they can promise and truly intend to do all these things for you. But if someone can't get that two-factor authentication code and they can't get in to your EHR, then it's going to be months before they can get that death certificate and, reach out and try and if they are going to even bother by that point
Yeah.
to follow through. Access to the information is the most important thing to really think about. And passwords, we write them down, we put them away. That piece of paper that you gave to your spouse to keep is also in and of itself, a potential risk. It
Mm-hmm.
could be lost. It could be, somebody else could see
Yeah.
it, get a look at it. And then, so a better method if you use electronic health is through a password manager, which we provide people so that they can store their professional accounts, which automatically then updates the password anytime they save
Uh,
it. And
okay.
they appoint us as the emergency contact so that
Got
we
it.
don't have access. We don't want access. While you
Mm.
are well, you are in charge. We don't want the liability of having
Right.
access to anything. We
Yeah.
don't store private data, but nothing. That's all on you in your way.
Yeah.
But if something were to happen to you, we initiate with the password manager this emergency access protocol. And then, with your permission that you've already given them, they would release the passwords to
Mm.
us so that we could instantaneously then log in,
Do
see
what you
your
got to do.
calendar, get
Yep.
your patient's contact
Yeah.
information, and start
Yeah.
moving.
That's
Um,
great. That's great. It does really sound like you have thought of everything.
we have
Well, you're learning, aren't
tried.
you? You're learning.
We have tried. I'm learning
Yeah.
a lot about, technology in a way that I never had to before. And thank goodness for my partner who has really spearheaded a lot of that. We've put together a system where it's very efficient, it's very
Mm.
simple. We hope it's stress-free. People go online, they fill out a very short first form about their practice and some details.
Yeah.
They do some eligibility. Are you licensed? Are you either using an EHR or willing to come up with a plan to digitize paper records?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the conditions. Yes and
Mm-hmm.
yes. Okay. Then you schedule your 1 hour consultation with us. You have to do nothing until you have that meeting with us. We guide you through it. Then
Yeah.
there's one form to fill out that will take, 20 minutes. Depending on your answers, you're going to list the contact information for all the
Yeah.
people that are going to be an important part of this plan. And then we generate the will and we have it sort of very streamlined. You have a client portal. You can go in, you can update your information, you can request a will update anytime. And it's just peace of mind. We will
Yeah.
remind you twice a year to update it in case
Yeah.
anything has come up. You can kind of check the box and forget it. not in the way that I think most of us wanted to do it, by having this piece of paper and thinking that's sufficient, but
Mm-hmm.
by really having a very, very well thought out plan in place that you could trust, if something happened,
Yeah,
you
this is
would be taken
excellent.
care of.
This is really, really excellent. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. Um, thank you for being so thorough in not just your explanation of what's involved, but in explaining what's around it, the factors around it that can impact us in ways that I think people are probably not used to hearing. I'm sure this is going to be eye-opening for folks. For those who like you've got their attention and they would like to know more, they want to learn more from you, or they may want to work with you. How do people find you? What's the best way to? Because I told you, I think I went and Googled you and found your practice website. And I was like, no,
Oh,
that's not it. It's not that,
no, it
which
does.
was
There is a
beautiful.
for therapist tab there. So if you end up there, go on the for therapist tab and you'll be directed. But yes, you can find us at www.theraclosure.com. That's TheraClosure.com. If you would like, we do have available a free Ultimate Professional Will checklist. So you
Hmm.
can go on there and provide your email, and we will send you a checklist that you can use if you're going to do it on your own, or you just want
Oh,
to
that's
think
great.
about it. You can
Yeah,
go through and think through all these issues. We also offer 20-minute free consultation, which you can schedule through the website. If you want to talk with us and see, if we could be helpful to you.
that's really, really great. I'm probably going to go get that checklist myself because you've got me thinking about this. So, guys, look at that. So, TheraClosure, THERA, TheraClosure, and we will have that linked in the show notes below, of course. I encourage you to go check out the checklist that she's got. I saw that on your website. I thought, oh, that's a good idea. It may be what you need. It may make you realize that you need something more too. And honestly, I found it very helpful reading the testimonials that you've got there, because I remember one in particular that stood out. I mean, I do my homework, right? But I remember one of them that stood out to me. Somebody said something about that they had been watching the panic in their partner's eyes as they were describing all the things that they would have to do if something happened to them. And
I can't tell you how many people have said, I'm signing up because my spouse is making me because they don't want to have to deal with this.
my
Yeah.
wife would have a cow. I mean, I can't even
Mhm.
imagine putting her through this. It would be
Mhm.
disastrous.
Yes, yes,
So if you care
yes.
about
The
your,
spouses are very grateful for us.
oh, forget worrying about your clients. Do this for your spouse. That's really funny. That's really funny. So we'll definitely link all that, and I encourage people to go check that out. And I just want to thank you, Robyn. This has just really been super, super, super helpful.
I I
I
thank you so much for your work and for the opportunity to help people sort of really develop their practice and create it from the beginning in the most conscientious way possible. And if we can be a
yes,
part of that, then I'm really
yes.
thrilled.
This too is part of having an ideal practice,
Mm.
right? To make sure that your clients are taken care of no matter what. I like to close by asking, is there anything that I've forgotten to ask you, or anything we haven't covered, or anything that you just feel called to share that would make this conversation complete?
Mm. I think what we are talking about as we talk about this underneath is really we're talking about the therapeutic alliance, whether you want to call it a bond, whether you want to call it transference or countertransference, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
working relationship, whatever. We all rely on that as therapists. That is our superpower, to create that. It's essential. And so that is what we are holding all throughout considering these issues. And I will end with sharing, one of the stories that someone shared with me. I had mentioned the first part of this person's story. So she was a young, early career therapist and told me that she had seen her therapist for 15 years. And
Wow.
then the therapist was suddenly not there. and not returning calls. And this is the person who thought, oh God, maybe she's finally sick of me. Maybe she's given up on me. And eventually was called, I believe actually she was notified by text message while she was traveling abroad,
Oh,
and
goodness.
was devastated, came back. The funeral had already happened. She, wasn't able to grieve. She felt like she couldn't even really tell
Wow.
anyone because she thought no one would understand the depth of her grief
Mm,
about her therapist. It's not like you
mm,
can go to work and say, I lost a close family member.
yeah.
People don't, it's not a socially sanctioned norm to say,
Yeah.
I'm devastated about the loss of my therapist. So she was keeping that all in and actually was sharing it with me. It was about 2 months after this happened for her, and was, sharing it with me as one of the first people she was telling the story to. And so what she said to me was, if that had happened 5 or 7 years earlier in my therapy work, I would have been devastated. This would have absolutely crushed me.
Mm,
As it is, we built, her metaphor was, we built a tree with strong enough roots and a big enough trunk and branches so that in this storm, the leaves and some branches fell off. This was a big
mm,
storm, but
mm.
the roots held it, and I am okay. And it's a
Ah,
testament to the work that we do, how important a therapeutic, impact is on our patients'
yeah.
lives. And
Yeah.
then the corollary is our duty to protect them.
Yeah. That's beautiful. What a powerful and perfect way to wrap this up. What a beautiful way to wrap this up. Um, yeah, the work we do matters, and it matters all the way. It matters all the way. So take care of your clients, take care of your
Thank you.
family, take care of your practice. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I
Mm,
appreciate this opportunity to share with everyone, and I think about my lost friend all the time, and how, lasting her impact and
for real.
tragedy is, for lots of other people.
I thought about that too. Talk about a legacy.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really also beautiful. Well, thank you. I want to tell those of you who are listening, it's Robyn Miller with a Y, so it's Robyn. Just in case you're not looking at this on your phone or wherever you are, and if you remember that later, I just want to plug that in real quick. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. It is a serious subject. It's a hard subject, an important one. And I think Robyn's done a beautiful job of helping us understand just how important it is. So because I know you guys and I know that you care deeply about your clients, often to the exclusion of other things that you need to also care about, my expectation is that you will take this to heart and you will act on it. And I certainly am going to, because I haven't done this either, guys. So this has gotten my attention as well. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Let me know what you think about this and let me know what you're doing about it. Okay. And have an awesome week. And I'll see you again next time, right here on the Ideal Practice Podcast. Bye now. Hey, y'all. If this program has become important to you, if Ideal Practice matters, it would mean so much to me if you'd be willing to take just a minute to do one or two of the following things. First of all, would you follow or subscribe to the show here at Ideal Practice? Following me helps you because you'll never miss an episode, but it helps me as well for all kinds of reasons. To do that, all you have to do is go to the show page for Ideal Practice on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. There, just click on the plus sign that you'll usually find in the top right-hand corner, or click on the word follow that you're going to find somewhere there on that page. Of all the things, this really is the most important thing you can do for the podcast itself. While you're there, it would be extra special if you would be willing to give me a 5-star rating And even better than that, a review with your own words. Your words matter. And when you write what you feel, what you think, you uplift and encourage others. And I love that. If you want to go a step further than that, take your favorite episode or two, one of the ones that has meant a lot to you, and share it with a friend. Could you do one or two of those things for me? I promise I will love you forever. You guys matter to me, and I value your support more than I can possibly say. Thank you, sweet friend, for anything you can do to help me out and support the show. I'll see you again soon.